11-18 just hit the rift, and with the official patch notes out, which 12 champions are going to be the worst in the game? What's up, GameLeap? The Jayce back at it, and I'm not saying you can't win on these champs. All I'm saying is you will be making your solo queue adventure more difficult than it has to be when you lock these in. Now, in terms of the countdown, there is no official order, so I want you to make your own orders, kind of like making your own pizza, and post your list in the comments. Now, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into it. So the first champion we have to talk about for 11-18 is Gangplank. Now, in 11-17, he actually had the lowest win rate out of every champion in the game, around 43%, which is abysmal. But there are some significant buffs for GP in 11-18 because of the Grasp of the Undying nerf, and because your Q is now counting as a ranged attack. GP's actual sustain and tankiness, I guess, in the top lane is a lot worse, but this patch you're getting more base HP and also more HP per level. Now, it might not sound like much, and it probably won't do enough to bring Gangplank back into the solo queue environment, but these are great changes. These give you a bit more durability for the early laning phase in particular, and also give you scaling, especially nowadays because you're going Essence Reaver and Shield Bow and Infinity Edge. Crit GP does not have any tankiness and is extremely squishy, so having a bit more HP will hopefully get you through that laning phase and those big team fights late game, but overall he will still be one of the worst picks, unfortunately. Now, another champion who got changed in 11-18, this is Jayce, and in pro play Jayce is picked a lot. He's a great flex pick, you can play at mid, top lane, but this patch he's been nerfed, so his passive, the movement speed you get when you switch weapons, the duration is actually down by half a second, and this is huge to be honest, because as Jayce, when you get jumped on, if you switch to your hammer form, the movement speed is really important to get away, especially because you can only knock back one champion with your E, so having that movement speed gets you away from both enemy champions. And it's weird because the nerf, you know, it's only half a second, who would care about that, but this is going to be significant, and this is why Jayce is going to be one of the worst champions, even though his items are good, even though he can still be played, especially if you're very good at Jayce and probably in higher elos, but in lower elos you're going to be more vulnerable, and he's just not worth picking. You might as well pick another AD spellcaster. Now, another champion for solo queue who is not going to be the best of picks in 11-18, this is Azir. And for Azir next patch, nothing is really changing in terms of items. There's no buffs, there's no nerfs, so it's not that bad, but Azir is still trash. In a solo queue environment where games are pretty much decided by 15-20 minutes in every single elo, well, at this point you only have one item, maybe two if you're lucky, and this still isn't enough to carry games. It takes way too long to scale, and your laning phase, though it can kind of be safe into range matchups against melee champions, it's just very hard to navigate your way through to a point where you're going to be relevant and powerful. So until Riot bring back cooldown reduction on Nash's tooth, Azir is probably going to stay on this countdown indefinitely. Now, the first ADC of this list in 11-18 got nerfed, so this is Kalista, and for pro play her ultimate has been nerfed, so the knockup duration is down, and in solo queue no one is not going to pick up because of this, so it doesn't really matter. But Kalista, especially in lower elos, is seriously struggling to make a name for herself. Even though your build with Immortal Shield Bow and Wit's End is extremely popular right now and actually very strong, Kalista just isn't that strong of a champion to really make this work like other AD carries. She's also very hard to master, and as I just said with the build, it's probably just more worth to pick another attack speed based AD carry. This is why her win rate across the board in every single elo ranges from around 45% to 47%, and this patch it might even go down because of the nerf, so really it's just worth picking another AD carry in the bot lane. Now, another champion who has not been enjoying life really since the tier map change is Rengar, and here's our next champion on this countdown. Now, for Rengar, if you play him top lane, if you play him in the jungle, and if you're a real Chad and you play Rengar in the bot lane, regardless of where you play Rengar, he is just not having a good time. Your clear speed compared to other junglers isn't good. Tiamat was your saving grace back in the day, but now, because it's completely changed, you're a lot worse off, and against all these conqueror junglers at the moment, Rengar typically struggles because you are a one-shot champion, but it's actually hard to get through all their resistance and their sustain. Now, don't get me wrong, if you do get a lead in the jungle, you can snowball super hard, but it's actually getting a lead that's the hard part. But there is some good news, because Rengar in 11-19, I've heard, is going to get changes, some significant changes, so hopefully in a patch time, Rengar will not be on this list, and his big problems will be addressed. Now, let's head back to the mid lane, bot lane kind of, and talk about this next champion, and this is Lucian. Now, despite getting buffed in 11-17, Lucian, because of his short range, and because he's kind of difficult to put out all that DPS, is still kind of struggling with a 47% win rate overall. Now, don't get me wrong, if you can play Lucian well, then you're probably still going to have success, no doubt, but generally speaking for the masses, it's still too hard to make work. Because of his short range, it means that you're going to be in team fights anyway, up close and personal to enemy champions, so if they have a Camille on the other team and you get jumped on, you're going to die. If they have a Malphite, if they have a Lissandra, whoever they have, it's just the fact you have to get close to the enemy team to deal damage, and for someone who isn't that good at the game, this is very hard to do and space at the same time. This is why a champion like Corki, for example, if you play him in the mid lane, is a lot more successful because he can stay at range and you don't have to be as mechanically perfect. Now, in the bot lane, Lucian's win rate has gone up significantly, so really I'm I'm mainly talking about mid Lucian here, but even in the bot lane, if you don't have someone who can empower you consistently, or if you don't have a CC champion, Lucian is still one of the worst AD carries to pick just because they're short range, and you're not going to proc your vigilance enough, so he comes in next on this countdown. Now following Lucian, we're going to head to the top lane again and talk about Renekton, because Renekton this patch has actually been nerfed for pro play, but even in solo queue this will still hit him. So what's happened is that your empowered W, the stun duration is now down by half a second. Now honestly, you really use this for the damage because it does a heck load of damage. So if the enemy champion is stunned for half a second less, you should still be able to get your full combo in and one-shot them. And there is actually a quality of life change here, so if you look, the empowered self-lockout duration, when Renekton himself stuns his target, he also can't move unless you actually input buffer an auto attack or another ability. Well, this is now down by about 33% in this timer, but still it's kind of relative to the actual stun duration itself. That doesn't really mean that much, it's just a nice change. And with all the nerfs to Renekton this season and how good other Gore Drinker champions are, it's just worth picking someone else in the top lane. Now we're going to head back to the mid lane here and talk about Zoe, who's actually getting buffed this patch. So what's happening is that your Sleepy Bubble Trouble, this cooldown is down by 2 seconds overall. This is amazing, especially for pro play and higher elos, because your E is a massive part of your kit. Even in lower elos this will help, but here's the thing, killing Zoe is still going to be very, very easy indeed. And in lower elos where you see Yasuo, you see Zeds all the time, Akali's, Katarinas, all you have to do is just miss your E once and it's still not going to be on a low enough cooldown for you to survive all that burst damage. But still, like a lot of these champions, if you can really play Zoe and master her, this is an amazing change. So I'm not saying you can't win, but it's still going to be a little bit difficult to win. You could just pick Ahri or Orianna or Syndra for a better time. Now let's head to the bot lane, and the next champion on this countdown, this is Twitch, who is also getting buffed this patch, so how on earth can he be on this list? Well, for Twitch, you're getting 10 more bonus AD in your ultimate, and that's it. Because Twitch, whether we like it or not, the AD version is just garbage. That's what it is. Even though you will have more damage at level 6 onwards, and because League of Legends these days is more about who can kill the other first, this is no doubt a buff, I'm not denying that. But it's the problem of actually getting to level 6 first without being 30 CS behind and 0-3. Also, because there is so much mobility in the game at the moment, in those team fights where you come out of stealth, everyone just sees you and jumps on your head in about 2 seconds. So like a lot of these champions on this countdown, you have to be way too precise when you play Twitch to make work in terms of your positioning, in terms of your spacing, in terms of your movement. And even if you do play the early laning phase well, there's still a good chance you're about 20 CS behind and the lane is already over. Now the last top lane champion on this countdown, this is another champion who has been buffed in 11-18, and this is Singed. So even though your poison trail when you're ulting is going to apply Grievous Wound, seriously, is this really going to matter? I mean, it definitely makes Singed better, especially in team fighting when you can apply this to 5 people, but this doesn't do anything to his squishiness, this doesn't do anything to help his bad itemization, and in the top lane there are just too many bruisers at the moment who are beyond broken who can absolutely dominate Singed, and even if you do proxy, trading farm with a Camille for example, you are always going to lose. And by the way, with any of these picks guys, let me know in the comments what you think the actual changes need to be to some of these champions to get them off this countdown. Now coming in next to the last AD carry of this countdown, this is Xayah, and despite all the buffs this season, Xayah is still one of the worst picks in solo queue. Even though your ultimate is now doing more damage, even though your mana costs are down, does anyone really care? Like, how is this going to stop you from dying when your ultimate is on a 3-minute cooldown? It's treated like a Requiem, and that's really the only pill you have apart from your flash, which is on a 5-minute cooldown. So you have a 3-minute cooldown and a 5-minute cooldown to survive team fights. This is just way too long because, well, especially in lower elos, fighting is non-stop, and you need low cooldowns to really make champions work. Also, the fact that you just don't hit hard enough, compare a Xayah, for example, to a Tristana, to a Kai'Sa, to a Draven, to a Lethality Caitlyn, it's just not on that next level. So Xayah, if you are going to pick an AD carry, it's probably best to stay away from, even if your support picks Ricard, it's just not worth the trouble. Now, the last champion on this countdown, guys, who you have to consider putting in your 1 to 12 list in the comment section, this is Twisted Fate, because if you play Twisted Fate, especially in lower elos, the laning phase is just so treacherous. Even in higher elos, if you blind pick Twisted Fate, there's so many champions who can screw you over. And I'm not even talking about assassins like Zed, like Yasuo, who, well, low elo TS really struggle against these, but even in higher elo, if you play against a bigger range champ like a Syndra, like an Orianna, like a Vel'Koz, like a Lux, it's very hard to get out of the early laning phase and actually get to level 6 without being so far behind. Now, don't get me wrong, TF in the mid lane has some of the best utility in the game, and if you do know the matchups and if you do play TF at a high level, you might even argue he's broken, and I'd probably be with you. But for the masses, overall, generally speaking, it just isn't worth picking this champion in solo queue. So those were the 12 worst champions of 11-18, guys. Let me know again in the comments what your list actually is, because these are the champions you have to pick from. And as always, if you like this video, please make sure to leave a like down below and make sure to check check out the GameLeap website on your way out for the best challenger tier content on the web, courses, guides, micro, macro, everything you need to know about League of Legends and how to play at a top tier level. It is all on our website, so check it out. Links in the description and comment section. And until tomorrow's daily upload, this has been the Jayce.